So here we are. This is the active construction zone for the Thacker Pass lithium mine. This is the water pipeline area where the company has been working for the past weeks. Here's this pile of dirt where they bulldozed to make this road. And literally about 2.5 feet past under this sage bush, baby birds. Brand new babies, alive, waiting for their parents to come feed them. Helpless in this nest under this sage here. This is what the mine is destroying. This is what the mine is harming. I'm gonna leave them alone.
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Abarca with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson and writer and teacher Jessica. We're online at whatsleftpodcast.com. You can find that link to our site in the episode notes. You can also find our personal social media handle as at Don Eduardo Abarca on Instagram and Jess's Twitter handle as at jhomie89. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode wherever you found this episode. Thank you. Right, let's discuss Thacker Pass. We originally had Max Wilbert, organizer, writer, and wilderness guide, also the author of Bright Green Lies, How the Environmental Movement Lost Its Ways and What We Can Do About It, with Derek Jensen and Lear Keith. And it was an amazing interview, and we expect to share this an episode with him with What's Left soon. But what happened, Jess, Andy?
I forgot to press record. We talked for an hour and 45 minutes, a magical conversation that was only into my ears and Jessica's ears and into Eduardo's, no one else, and Max's. So it was quite a moment when I shared that and said, "Oh God!" At the end of we were done, and I was like, I didn't record any of this. So, but it was great talking to him, and it's only committed me more to really getting this stuff about Thacker Pass out. And he's agreed to rejoin us for a discussion next week. That I think will start off with some of the stuff we're talking about here, but I just felt our conversation went into so many issues that I think there's a lot to discuss with him, in addition to the struggle that he's involved in and letting people know about what's important about this lithium mining that's taking place in Thacker Pass.
Yeah, so hopefully we can lay some groundwork for a conversation with him next week.
Yeah, and I was telling Jessica, like, ironically, in that conversation, we didn't actually discuss Thacker Pass that much. So we'll do that here and give folks the details that are important to us. I'm sure Max will add some things next week, but you know, I just have to let it go. I've struggled all week to let this go, and I'm just going to have to.
And as Jess said, we're still recovering from that amazing interview. So
I have PTSD. As Max said, we're all human, so he was very gracious about. Yeah.
For now, we're all human. Later, we'll find out.
Yeah.
And if Max, you're listening to this, viewing or listening to this, we again apologize greatly for that brain fart. Anyhow, so as stated, we'll be discussing Thacker Pass, and we'll be discussing a little bit about Max. I think not too much, because I hope that he'll be able to share a lot of what he already shared with us in that interview. Yeah, right. Thacker Pass. So this was originally a topic of discussion that was suggested to us by Jess. Why don't you tell us why, Jess?
Sure. So why did I bring it up? I mean, I just feel it connects. Even honestly, I was thinking about just this segue, and there's so many connections between our last full episode on AI and just the role of industry in the fourth industrial revolution. Obviously, we've talked a lot in various contexts about environmentalism, and I think the way you put it last week, Eduardo, of like that term even kind of being captured and co-opted by the mainstream left, the so-called, green New Deal proponents, and in the context of like 4IR, we're seeing the normalization of electric cars, emerging markets being created for smart this, smart that. And I mean, there's a lot of different components to that. Thacker Pass, Thacker Pass itself is, a place in northern Nevada, where they're trying to move forward basically with an open pit lithium mine. So a lot of the conversation with that revolves around lithium in particular, which is one of the key precious minerals, right, that is required for things like electric car batteries and smart devices. It's not the only material. I know we've talked briefly about cobalt and nickel, and then of course like all the sort of overlap with fossil fuels being used in various capacities to extract, violently extract these so-called green materials from the earth, from the ecosystem. So yeah, just thinking about the role of this from a narrative perspective, things being greenwashed, that kind of narrative control that we're always trying to kind of deconstruct on the show. Capitalist warmongering, psychopaths trying to kill the earth. And yeah, I mean, the sort of like trigger thing for me, why I had brought it up like a week or two ago, is because I mean, I've kind of been following the basics of what's been going on with the Protect Thacker Pass movement. I call it a movement or organizing, which was kind of started by Max and Will Falk back in 2021, where they basically just went and like set up camp, like a protest camp, and it's gone from there. There have been various stages. There's been a lot of like legal fights been going on over the past, year and a half? I'm so bad with time. I feel like everything post 2020 is just a blur to me. But yeah, the past year or two. And then 2 weeks ago ish, I happened to see on their Twitter some images of basically like a direct action of activists climbing onto heavy machinery in order to kind of shut down construction for a short period of time. I think they shut it down for a day, maybe more. I don't know. So I was just thinking about strategies in terms of fighting these, like, David and Goliath, or seemingly David and Goliath kind of fights. And we're all kind of in our different, got the education front, we've got the tech front, we've got the environmental front, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think it's interesting to talk about just kind of on the micro level, like what's happening there, like why does this particular place matter so much, but then also sort of what does it represent and how does it fit into this larger fight, I guess, against ecocide and the fourth industrial revolution.
Jess, the more I looked into this and after especially our conversation with Max Wilbert, I'm grateful you've mentioned this. I have not heard of this mine from any of the mainstream and alternative leftist news like Democracy Now! Or even KPFA, where normally these things would be covered. I think that just like the documentary that we covered back, I forget when, but Planet of the Humans, regarding the environmental movement and its hypocrisy. This is one of those. This is one of those areas where environmentalists stay quiet around this issue because they don't want to say something regarding this that is supposed to be their key to climate change, which is more solar power panels and wind energy, and using all of that will also take a lot of mining, a lot of resources from the natural world. It is only acceptable, just like our recycling is acceptable, if it's done elsewhere, right? But if it's done here in the USA, suddenly it's not acceptable. But we've been doing this for a very long time. I mean, where do we get our lithium from? Where do we get all of our things from? The phones that we use. And I don't say this for the people who want to, obviously I use a phone as well. I'm not changing every time an iPhone comes out to be able to be up to date. I'm obviously we're all using our technology. We're even using it now as we speak. But it is a call to understand the hypocrisy of the green movement and the greenwashing, really, that has already been the greenwashing that is just clearly happening. And I think it's an important conversation to have around this topic. And the second thing that I think that I was struck by, which I don't want to delve too much, personally, I don't want to delve too much into because I really want us to discuss it with Max Wilbert, is there is something to say about the convergence or the efforts that have been made together with regional Native American tribes, the environment organizations, and the local farming and ranching community that are coming together in order to protect this land. And these are three different types of groups that normally would be in opposition, or maybe not, they would overlap. But some of the things that Max Wilbert, I have the questions quite clear in my head that I want him to answer because I want him to say it from, but the things that he has shared with us, it would just give us an example of what we need to do in our struggle, in our movement, as we are challenging the status quo, as we're also coming up against just the importance of how our revolution could look like in the future, how we need to take up the idea that our comrades are not the people that think 100% like us, and that can really be our allies. Because as we have seen, and especially in the videos that I have shared in 2020, 2021, where people who claim to be allies, especially liberals and progressive leftists, will always, when push comes to shove, abandon you and the working class if you're not necessarily aligned with their specific agenda, with what they want. And it's only hypocritical political theater is what I think of it as. And I'm referring to, if no one has seen those episodes, which I invite people to see, the episodes on the reopening of schools and teachers and working class families, and the division that caused, and the division there was because people did not want to be on the same team. And that was specifically teachers who are now right now, who I just attended this board meeting last Tuesday, and it was very interesting being and seeing two different camps. I saw the people who were for and I saw the teachers union, and they were asking for a salary raise, and they were asking for not $30 an hour for paraeducators, and they were asking for higher raises for teachers. I'm for that, but I just wanted to say at the mic, I'm so pro this, but where were you when we needed you back in 2021? Where were you? and you expect us now to be a part of your team and to show solidarity with you and to be united on this front, when back 3 years ago you left us in the what do you in the dunch? What's the expression? In the lurch, I think it is.
Oh yeah, left you in the lurch.
Yeah, you see, it's always here somewhere. But anyhow,
Always know it. I don't know why you always.
No, they did. I think about that time, and I think about our moving forward, where we are heading, and who are our allies today. And so that is an important conversation to have. And that's why I'm grateful that you have brought this up, because looking into this further, Jess, and delving into it, there's a lot of things that one can pull out of this alone. That's that. And then I think maybe we can discuss some of the chronology, the status of the mine.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say really quick before Andy goes, like, I really liked that question that you asked Max last week about sort of like working across differences, and I liked his answer because he didn't romanticize it in any way. It's not like, oh, la-di-da, like these groups are just like, seamlessly able to work together and overcome all their differences or whatever. Like, yeah, there's sometimes fundamentally different values between, like, say, conservative ranchers and, tribal peoples, white environmental, like, Western activists coming in. Like, they're really different groups, those kind of three central groups. But I mean, that's what has to be done, is like, we have to learn to have conversations and then to put those conversations actually into action and do something. And I feel like that's, kind of one thing that we try to do. I mean, more on like a conversational basis, but we try to do on the show is like just not shy away from trying to model, however like messy they are and ugly, and sometimes we don't like find a resolution. But yeah, I think we need more of that, because especially the mainstream left seems to be just narrower and narrower in terms of like who they will allow even into the debates.
Yeah. I mean, oh, geez, where do I want to start? I think I'll say, when you said stay quiet, Eduardo, it's interesting. It brings you back to us challenging the mainstream left. The left has been anti-war, but it's going to stay quiet while the U.S. arms Ukraine in something that can lead to a war between the United States and Russia. The mainstream left opposes corporations, but it's going to stay quiet when massive corporations like pharmaceutical companies and big pharma are brought in and fuse with the state to push their products on us and to force our products on us and to fire workers who refuse to take those products. The mainstream left supposedly supports the plight of opposition to racism, but it supports keeping immigrants out when Democrats do it. It only opposes it if Republicans do it. And I think this is a perfect example of a mainstream left that says it wants to protect the environment, that it says it's against these processes of mining and of capitalist production and resource extraction that lead to the destruction of the earth, and they talk about global warming, but at least lead to the harming of the environment. And so they'll be against coal, open pit mining, but they'll give a pass to lithium. In fact, they'll support it. Brandy was telling me today that she was listening on NPR about a mine that's being started called the Lithium Imperial Valley in California. Newsom actually was lauded for supporting this thing, where they're now planning to do a similar kind of lithium mine. Although I think the way they extract is going to be different than the way it's being done here in Nevada, in Thacker Pass in Nevada. But it's going to take millions and millions of gallons of water per year. to do so. It's going to basically level whole sections of land. It's open pit mining. It's ugly and it's destructive to the environment. And in this case, in the case of the Thacker Pass, it is also destructive to historic sites of native people who themselves were screwed over from the first resource rush, or old resource rush of the gold rush. And now that there's going to be a lithium, cobalt, strontium rush, now they're going to find their lands extracted and chewed up again by the same machine. So we go, oh, that was awful. What happened to the Native Americans, in the 18th or 19th century? Well, now in the 21st century, look, we're going to repeat it again by, going anywhere we need to go and taking anything we can, and citing. It was interesting when he talked about the fact that the mining laws of 1872 were cited for the right of this, the Nevada Lithium Corporation, I think it's called,
Lithium,
or Lithium Nevada Corporation.
Lithium Nevada, and I think it's Lithium America that
Okay, so what Lithium America is? What
I think isn't Lithium Nevada like a state subsidiary, or are they separate entities?
Okay, I thought it was Lithium Nevada Corporation.
It is Lithium, like Lithium Nevada is who's doing them.
Okay, yeah. So they'll be doing this mining, and they're basically getting this land at whatever it was, I think it's like $2.50 an acre, and they just have to stake a claim. So and I really think I think what Max and the people who are fighting at Thacker Pass raise the question of, is this a world we're prepared to go forward into? And that question was live when we were coal mining extracting. That question is live when we're pumping for gas on the offshore of California, or even in the Middle East, wherever. But the question is now coming up again in a new extraction, in a new set of resources that are being taken out of the land, and of course given a pass because it's for supposedly things that will protect the environment. These electric cars, which there's no environmental protection here. When you look at all the resources brought to bear for this process of extraction, as it was laid out in Planet of the Humans, even if you thought, and I no longer count CO2 among the things that I'm concerned about as it relates to the capitalist destruction of the environment. CO2 production to me is not the thing I'm worried about. I am worried about the capitalists when they say they're going to bring like thousands of tons of sulfuric acid into the region to be part of the extraction process for getting lithium out of that region, which is how they're going to do it. That's one, it's spodumene, which is a type of rock that you can only extract lithium from that when you bring sulfuric acid into the game. So in addition to using millions of gallons of water, they're going to be taking, they're going to be truckloading tons and tons of sulfuric acid into this region and using that as part of the process by which they extract lithium from the rock there. And of course,
sulfuric acid is a byproduct of oil refineries. Is that correct?
I don't know where they get all the sulfuric acid. That I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it comes straight from, pretty much straight from
okay, so and maybe they're saying, oh, well, look, we're putting this to use. But in light of what we just saw in East Palestine, Ohio, I don't think I would want like tons and tons and tons of sulfuric acid going across trains in this country all the time. This is just another accident waiting to happen. And do you really? I mean, what are they talking about? They're talking about taking the rock, the process of extracting lithium. You have to take the rock, ground it up, and then you put it into a giant heating furnace and then you cool it again. So all this is going to take tons of energy. Then you cool it again, and then you put it in hot sulfuric acid. It's an incredibly energy extensive process. So it's going to be, if you were concerned about CO2 production, you're going to be producing a ton of greenhouse gases to get this lithium extracted. But I think most important is just the destruction of native lands, of native historic lands, and of species that are fragile, that are in the region, and just the fact that something that Max was writing about, it's one of the few places that is truly quiet, truly dark, where you can really be at peace. Are we going to not leave any place left alone to be at peace? the answer, I guess, is no, we're not. We're going to take anything we want. And I'll get into more, like, why do I think they're doing this? I think there's an intimate link between battery production and the fourth industrial revolution. I guess I'll just go with this. This is what I just saw from Samsung. They were saying, what kind of energy changes will there be in the era of the fourth industrial revolution? To realize the state in which everything is interconnected, battery is an absolute necessity. This is because battery enables us to overcome the limits of space and time, such as supplying or replenishing energy continuously once it is all used up. For instance, an AI robot is useless if it can only function for no more than 10 minutes when it's unplugged. For an AI robot to self-study through big data, it must be turned on 24/7, right? For robots, drones, wearable devices, and the like to be able to move around sufficiently enough to help us, they must be powered for a long period of time without a plug. Ultimately, the solution to this problem is an energy storage device, aka battery. The realization of a hyper-connected society where no time and space constraints exist, essentially for robots, that I added that, depend on battery technologies that provide large capacity and high efficiency. So not only are we being replaced by AI, but all this lithium battery extraction is ultimately to power robots that need to be able to move autonomously so that they can take our jobs or put us back into pens or attack us if we get out of line. And that's the fourth industrial, the Internet of Things that are all powered. I mean, really, we're talking about how do you power things? You need batteries.
I just keep thinking too about, I don't know, especially in academia, but just in general, like just the emphasis that the left in particular has placed on like this idea of decolonization the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, especially. Like, I can't tell you how many times a week I hear that in like leftist academic spaces and, you know, I'm sure elsewhere. And it's just, yeah, like you said, obviously in a direct way, you know, Max was, yeah, kind of educating us on some of the history of Thacker Pass and the Thacker Pass massacre that happened, you know, which was literally US Army, like, just slaughtering people. And it's like, I don't know, there's no way in which this is not recolonization, like, from an environmental perspective, from an economic perspective, like, it's just mind-blowing, like, this green new world or whatever can be framed as part of a decolonization process when it is the exact opposite. It is recolonizing it, like, on every level, literally displacing people, animals, wildlife, like, just bulldozing the shit out of a whole ecosystem. And they've already started. I forget how many, like, 1,000 acres he said they've already just completely bulldozed. Like it's nothing, you know, like it's just numbers. It's, you know, what is now ecosystem services and financialization of nature and all of this just like euphemistic bullshit. And it just blows my mind. Like it's colonization on every level.
It's on. Yeah, and you know what I have just learned as I'm reading about it more over since we've last spoken, and I've been listening to the interviews that he's done. Very few, like I think Vice did something on it, and then there was their own, his friend Max Wilbert and his friend
Will Falk.
Yes, thank you, Jess. And you know, this is the largest, what was it? I think it's the largest known lithium deposit in the US. And it's one of the largest in the world. And it's not getting any attention as we're saying. And this was approved in in 2021, but this year is when they've decided to start the construction. And they, as you said, it's already begun, and there have been lawsuits. And as Max continuously told us, it's just because there are lawsuits in the process of this, that doesn't mean that they're going to stop. And the beauty of this, I think, would just that he described, that also I've been reading some essays from, anyone can see on the Protect Thacker Pass .org. And I have never been to Thacker Pass. I have been to Death Valley, and I took my former charge there when the child I fostered, I took from there. And it wasn't necessarily the greatest thing that I thought it was to do, because I was like, we should do more forests, like I wish I could take them to Montana and just go see those forests, or go to somewhere else. And we went to Death Valley, and there was this amazing ranger there that gave us a very beautiful tour at this site. And also just the amount of time that we spent there at night, watching all of the stars and seeing all of the beautiful blooms, and because we went during the spring. And then just even recently I was reminded of that experience when I read with my book club, Desert Solitaire, which if folks want to read it, it's by Eduardo Abarca. It's a good meditation reflections on the of the desert, where he's a ranger, but it has some a little bit of sexist and racist few paragraphs that I didn't really like. But it's a very good book on just the descriptions and the wilderness and just the wild that exists out there on Arches National Park outside of the Moab, Utah desert. And I think that would be a beautiful description, of being able to also describe a lot of other deserts, even though each are unique and their own. But what we're doing, and what is normally seen as, it's just another desert land, desolate place, where even they make they test bombs at certain desert sites, and isn't so much what do you call it? It's not appreciated by most of the public. Andy, when you told me that you were interested in maybe going down and living in Arizona or something, or even when you went down with Brandy to Joshua Tree and you've appreciated those areas, I'm reminded of those things, which I've taken some time for me to even appreciate those areas, because I just mostly love forests. I've gone to appreciate it, but it's not. And then I don't think of it as, I don't think most people would see it as always as important. But then if you look at even just some of the images online, the mountain where it's located, it's gorgeous. And then also, just as you were talking about colonization, Jess, I'm also thinking about the tribes that I don't want to, what do you call it? Fetishize tribes and their relationship to nature. I think that all of us have our ancestors from different continents that have had that relationship. Except I think the reason why we see tribes as that is because we are on this land, right? We're not I'm not in Mexico. You're not in your ancestral land, we're originally kind of from, if so to speak. But I think that the reservations of and this country's history and where we live in the USA obviously brings to us the forefront of the indigenous cultures of this country. So that's the reason why we're bringing it up, and we're talking about a specific area. But a lot of places aren't considered to be tribal land technically and by law, and I have an issue with that, because even as I'm here in San Francisco, this is Ohlone land, so to speak. And Ohlone's tribes are not necessarily recognized by the federal government. That's also arbitrary, by and the allowance of that, I think, by a lot of indigenous tribes to allow, or to be reliant, I should say, by law and to also need to go through court to fight something like this. This isn't something that I think is, not to dismiss the efforts that are being done by those, even like as I think about Brandy and how much she does through her local her local organizing through using of laws. I'm, without dismissing again the efforts that are being done through the legal system, which is, if that's their route, that's their route. I'm struck mostly by the direct action that these people are taking, and by what's his name again? Will. I'm sorry, the last name is difficult
Falk.
for me. Huh?
Falk? Will Falk?
Yeah, Will and the indigenous tribes out there taking direct action and stopping the protest camp that they have set out there, and stopping the construction and delaying it. I had something for us to learn. I said the working together of alliances, but also the direct action that these communities have taken, which is admirable. Because sometimes, as I said, like many times, as I've organized currently at my site and trying to go through emails and trying to go through administration and trying to go through all these things, get so caught up and clogged in this pipe that it only allows for further expansion of whatever you're trying to resist, that this is an admirable way of trying to do something, which is direct action. And these people are camping out. And they're like, I'm not going to move. And that takes courage. That takes extreme courage. And that's what I'm moved by. And also by this by this project, by this the occupation of Thacker Pass. Sometimes as I talk to friends, as I mentioned in the last one, and I probably just will delve into unless someone else wants to interrupt me, and forgive me for me wandering if you need me to interrupt me. But I mentioned in the last episode that I was last week with two friends from Nicaragua, and not in this last episode, but in the episode that wasn't posted and that was recorded, I mentioned it briefly. But my friends from Nicaragua who have just been released from prison in Nicaragua, who were part of the 222 people that were boarded on a flight, and who knows, whatever negotiations were made between the U.S. Administration and the Nicaragua and country, but resisting the Ortega dictatorship and the torture they have gone through. And I invite folks to look up Kevin Roberto Solis. If they do, you'll see his story. And I am working with him and his partner. I'm not sure if I can state her names, but I know Kevin is out there everywhere, so he doesn't mind it. The things that they have gone through, and then thinking about this direct action, I self-reflect and think, how much am I willing to put myself on the line to do something such as this, such as what Gavin Solis has done, such as what Will Falk has done, or as well as Max Wilbert in camping out there, and the communities out there that I don't know them personally. They're just the tribes that have been mentioned, and that I hope Max can delve into and share more about them.
You should include the images too of some of the elders in wheelchairs and stuff. We make a lot of excuses for ourselves of risk things, and so I agree with you, Eduardo.
Yeah, so that is what I wanted to highlight in my share. It's that I am moved by.
I'm really struck by that too. I know Max is part of Deep Green Resistance, which is an amazing, I think they consider themselves anarchist environmental organization, which is actually how I originally ended up finding his work a few years back. And they have a really in-depth kind of manual for organizing strategies. And I think like having read that, you can kind of see even like with this action, which I mean, I think they're pretty experienced activists. Like Max is very humble, but he's done a lot of stuff. But I mean, you never know. Like every protest, every project is different, right? Every community that you work with is unique, but you can kind of see them going through, like, you know, he said flat out last week, like, yeah, we know like the legal system is set up for us to fail. Like, you know, you mentioned the, what is it, 18 whatever mining laws, Andy. I mean, even just in general, like this country, our whole legal system is set up for corporations to win over people and over animals and over ecosystems. Which I think like, yeah, like the past few years, especially I hear, especially on the right, like a lot of, in the left, it's like vote, you know, vote for change, which we know that's set up for, you know, status quo at best. We've talked about that before, but on the right, I do hear a lot of like, well, the law will protect us. The Bill of Rights will protect us. The Declaration of Independence will protect us. We need to just sue these people in order to hold them accountable, stuff like this. And yeah, I think it's like, I'm not saying like don't do the lawsuits, but I'm very skeptical that on a grand scale, like it's just, it was never set up for that. I mean, you want to talk about like tribal peoples, right? And these documents, I mean, they weren't even included as like people, and it was their fucking land. It is their land, right? So it's just kind of interesting to consider this in the context of just all of this political division and energy and people being pulled into like this strategy and that strategy, right? Because it's not just about like what you value, but it's like if you're actually going to try to wage a struggle, like how you do that matters, right? And I agree with you, Eduardo, that like we need to be more willing, we need to be more like Max and his comrades in the sense that they're like, well, we can go set up a camp. Like we can do that. That's something that we can do, right? There's risks, but when you look at sort of what's at stake, but I think you don't want to take those risks just like willy-nilly, right? Like you don't want to waste your, I don't know, it's something I think about a lot is like where do I actually want to hold the line and like in what way? I mean, anybody can like fight the system and just get themselves like thrown in jail. Like we could all do that tomorrow. But you want to make it like worth it. So I don't know, something I've kind of been thinking about a lot, and just in terms of like learning from other activists and organizers, like not just present day, but like looking back through history at like, well, what has worked and how has it worked? Because they never fucking like teach you any of this stuff, right? Like they teach you, oh yeah, like whatever, Rosa Parks, like they present her as just like some random old lady who like decided one day spontaneously that she didn't want to give up her seat on the, you know, in the front of the bus. This is not accurate, right? I mean, she was an extremely experienced organizer, trained activist, right? Nonviolent direct activism, like these things don't just sort of spontaneously happen. So yeah, I think there's a lot for me to learn in terms of strategy, because I definitely feel like I've been someone who, even though I've like done activism, I think a lot of it has been poorly strategized, you know. So I feel like I'm catching up.
I have I mean, Max will come back and he'll probably tell us what he thinks about this kind of discussion we're having. I don't think what we've lacked is strategy, although the vast majority of people's strategy is to think that this system can be reformed, or the vast majority of people's strategy is run around the idea that somehow maybe there's an electoral way or the state intervenes some sort of way. Let's talk about that strategy. That strategy has proven itself not just a failure, but has proven itself to be a way in which the attack is escalated and reintroduced. It's a way in which the enemy gets in on our side, gets, penetrates our front lines and gets us to fight for them instead of against them. But I don't think Max believes they're going to, okay, I'm not going to speak for him. They're not going to win unless people see that the fight that they're waging there is the kind of fight that we all must wage in our own locales, in the area that we feel passionate about, because that's what has brought those people there. They feel passionately about that territory. They hate the use that's being used by which is coming in. It's not like if somebody came over and said, "Hey, can I borrow something? Or can I have something? I need it for a friend who's injured." I'm sure people there would be willing to share of the resources that they have that are there, but that's not what's happening. This company is coming in to take, but not just to take. It's coming in to take a resource which will be used to destroy us. Not just in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, but other reading I saw was the batteries are energy storage mechanisms, and electricity, which is going to be the key energy, which has been for a while, but will be the key energy of the fourth industrial revolution. It's not easy to store that. It's not easy to store electricity. You can store oil, you can have resources, and the U.S. state does store oil just in case it needs it for war, but it can't do it with electricity. So part of this idea that why the U.S. is doing this is related to energy independence of the Middle East, so that they can develop their own electrical energy sources and store it and use it to power the things they need. So it's not just a colonization. This is part of a leg of imperialism, and the multipolar world that people think is going to be wonderful. This is going to be a leg of it. It means the U.S. is going to say we have to figure out how to extract resources from the ground so that we can store energy in a battery, and so that we can use that to power our robots and our tanks and our war machine, so that we can defeat our enemies in China and Russia. So that's what the people of Thacker Pass are up against. They're up against the powers of the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and they're up against the U.S. empire. They know they can't win, but all of us are up against that. All of us in education, all of us in medicine, all of us in every effect. If you're driving a car right now, if you're a truck driver, all of us are up against this system. And unless we decide to say, you know what, the law is not going to be the thing that's going to help us. And I do think that he gives a timeline of their struggle and shows the different ways that they tried to use the law to slow the opponent down. I don't think they had any belief that this was going to be the thing, that they were looking for legal tricks to try to stop them, but the system is geared against them. And like he ultimately said, "Oh, we recognize that this is a historic site. We recognize, but that's all we need to do. We can recognize it. We feel your pain. Now we're going to go take it." And that's all they're bound to do. So I feel like what they're saying, particularly when Max was talking about not just lithium extraction, but other resource extraction, is all of us are now in this fight. And unless we wage this sort of fight in our locales, we're going to lose. And I'm not sure he's saying that, but that's the message I take from it. And that's what I believe is we're all going to have to figure out how to be Thacker Pass activists, if you will, in our own location. Because he's not inviting us all to go to Oregon. He's saying if you don't agree with this kind of world being put upon you, then this is what you're going to have to do to stop it.
Well, that's what I feel like the past couple of years, in terms of sort of feeling abandoned by people that I thought were maybe not totally in agreement with me on everything, but at least on my side in the general fight, or at least looked at me or conversed with me in good faith. And I just felt a lack of moral courage from my so-called comrades. So I guess I agree with you. I'm not saying that they think they're going to went out over lithium Nevada. They know it's a David and Goliath fight, but you still have to wage it because it's that important. I mean,
Mhm.
and yeah, like you said, it's not every single person has to wage that particular fight, although, they do they do need people to go there, like, who feel called to do so. And yeah, I was thinking too about, like, I think this was back on what Eduardo was saying a little earlier, but like this idea of sort of perception and, well, one, like, out of sight, out of mind, which I think is the story with a lot of um resource extraction, especially when we do it like abroad. It's like, yeah, people might condemn it, but it's happening over there. And even in mainland America, right? I mean, even this place, right? It's remote. It's not familiar to most people. And yeah, like the desert kind of has this weird association of being like barren and a wasteland, even though, like he was saying, like, well, it's not a wasteland to the bullfrogs and the birds and the antelope and whatever. Like, what about their home? So I think there is like an aspect of this which is just sort of a, I don't know, like, if it's not your home, like, of course you're not going to feel as compelled to defend it, right? Um, I think if the government came in or a corporation came in and, like, walked into your house and said, like, "Yeah, we hear your we hear your claim to this, but get the fuck out," right? Like, and they start bulldozing, you're gonna be pretty motivated to at least try to do something, go to court, or you know throw hands, or something, right? But it's a lot harder to do when it's out there, like over there. I think there's a lot of people who like care, but not enough to not enough to cultivate that moral courage, which is necessary.
Well, just one thing. This is the Green New Deal put in play, right? So people who historically have said that they would oppose this are now promoting it, and they kind of don't want to know about it. That's what was when Brandy was telling me the NPR episode that was today that was talking about Imperial Valley, which is in California. The person who was on NPR being interviewed was basically saying, this is why this is a great thing. This is why this lithium extraction is a great thing. And there were some callers who came in and said, well, what about, isn't this going to like somehow hurt the land? Isn't going to still create greenhouse gases? And the person really tried to dodge all the questions, but the NPR interviewer didn't in no way tried to put them on the spot. In fact, they gave them a forum to try to like help assuage people's fears and say you should get behind this. And that's what the left is doing now. It's basically being marshaled to support a capitalist attack on humanity. And we have to understand this is our home. And I'm not going to have to go to Oregon to fight it. I think I'm going to have to fight it here in Oakland.
You mean Nevada? You keep
I'm
saying
sorry. Yeah, I'm not going to have to go to. Thank you. I'm not going to have to go to Nevada. I'm not going to have to go to Nevada to fight it. And I know what I said. Then I'll just put that in there.
I mean, I think it is an invitation to look at where we are locally and see where we can be in the community that we are in to cause a transformation, to stir things up, to strike. No, I look at my local school site where I am, and that's where I think that's the best way to be. I was telling this to Kevin Solis's partner. I'm not sure if I can say her name or not, but she was upset and angry that she got back, and she says, I don't want to be in this country. She was given amnesty and given a place to come here, and it was as if some favor. She wants to go back to Nicaragua and be with her comrades. That's what she wants to do, back in the prison where she was at. She didn't know she was getting on a plane. They just covered the buses, and they blinded them, covered them as they were taking them to an airport, but they didn't know until they heard airplanes, and they thought they were going to be somewhere else. And they didn't realize they were coming here. But I said to her, you don't have to give up your fight. There's a lot of work to be done here too. And we need people like you as well. We're going to need that same energy. Yes, your family's in Nicaragua. Yes, your comrades over there in Nicaragua. But there is also a fight to be had here. And I would love it if you joined whatever area you think you need to in this area here. I would love it if you joined me, honestly. But it calls folks to action here, or in your, not here like in SF, but what I mean is in your place. And I think something awoke within her, because it was a very long discussion, and I'm probably summarizing in a very horrible way, but it was a 2-hour discussion, no, 3. It was a long discussion, and we were discussing all of her politics and all of the politics here, and she felt really identified, and she found it reassuring that I'm an anarchist, and that she also has a lot of very anarchist leanings, and she's looking forward to our relationship as she's trying to find her way here. But that's what I'm trying to say by that story is that you're right, Andy, that maybe we are not going over to camp. I think I'd like to actually. I think that there's something in my mind about just wanting to go over there. Maybe I'll go see Jess after that, or we'll go meet at Crossroads or something.
But down there.
Yeah.
I need a permanent dog sitter on call for all my projects. Carry on.
Yeah, but that doesn't, even if I wasn't able to go, like I didn't go to Standing Rock. At the time I was too disoriented, and I wish I had gone, I had just experienced emptiness syndrome, and I was trying to find my footing as I was in a routine and in a mind space where I thought I was totally dedicated to a child, and then suddenly there was this like vacuum that I didn't know what to do with, and I didn't feel mentally prepared to go at that time to Standing Rock. But this is a place where I would love to go, even if it's a bit of us. And something that really struck is what Max said, where he's been at protest or he's organized with 1 or 2 people. That has been me, and I'm sure you both have experienced that as well. I remember going over to Gilroy, California, and there's this big building, Syngenta, and they're in cahoots with all the other companies, Monsanto, and they do a lot of genetically modifications, a lot of biotech and geoengineering. Biotech stuff, genetically modified engineering. So there was just a few of us, and I felt at that time really disheartened because I had organized to try to make this happen, but it was so far out there. It's not like here in SF where you have, and it was a rural community. And I tried to organize folks to come, and last minute people were dropping. And I was going over there on my little yellow Volvo, that here I am going to go to this protest that I organized. And there were just about 10 of us, 15 of us, which isn't 1 or 2, as Max was saying, but I have been on those as well. But that is, if that's what we need to do, that is the transformation that we are causing. and so I applaud Will Falk. So that's what I'm taking away from this. So anyhow, back to
I think everybody should
you two. I'm very slow
have the experience of like participating in a protest where there's like 5 of you or 2 of you. It's humbling, but it also kind of like, I don't know, once you do it once, like I remember going to like animal rights vigils or protests and stuff, and yeah, like it'd be like a couple people, and at first there's like this exasperated just like why does no one else care, like why can't anyone help us? But I don't know, you just keep doing it, and I mean it's not like if you just keep showing up like automatically people are going to join you, but if you keep showing up like in the fight again and again in different ways, like even I'm thinking like more recently about like the anti-lockdown protests that I was a part of in Seattle, like 2020 when I first started doing it, like there was one day where we were out there, and this is in, a major metropolitan city. I think there were 4 of us, all women, like we're small, fairly small women, like super friendly, not like non-violent, on this sidewalk. We weren't even like stopping traffic or anything, and like we had people drive by and throw bottles at our heads for like just the tamest sidewalk protest of all time, like ever. And I mean, it was a little scary, like, but now the lady who was organizing those actions, I mean, she went out in summer of 2020 and she went to Golden Gardens in Seattle by herself with a sign that said like, I can't remember what her sign said, something about like, questioning the narrative that was being shoved down our throats. And it was just her. And one person went by like on their bike and said like, oh, what's this about? And then went out with her like the next time. And now she's had like hundreds, maybe thousands of people joining her protests in the past couple of months. So I don't know. You never know like what is gonna work and where people are gonna either join you or at least like see, like suddenly, something will become visible to some portion of the population. I don't know. I don't think it's like a lost cause. It being like whatever.
Well, I mean, I think for me, why I'm glad you brought this Thacker Pass fight up over the lithium being extracted out of the land of native people and out of land where antelope and sagebrush are found, is because it's not so much about what's the strategy of the folks, for me at least, or whether they will win, but it's about why they're doing it. And the reasons they're doing it are because they challenge this world that says this is what should be going on in order for us to proceed as a civilization. And I think that I agree with that challenge. I agree with saying, no, this is not what we're going to do. Like, we're going to have to go down a different path. One that does not force us to do this to this ground or any other ground. And so that to me is what's so meaningful about, and they're passionate about it because they believe it. And so I am increasingly coming to believe that we cannot proceed with a world that's going to try to operate this way, which is what the Green Movement and the new Green New Deal is really about. It's about fooling people into believing that there's a way of getting around ripping up the earth and destroying the world environmentally, while still producing all this stuff. And there isn't. It's actually going to accelerate the loss because, I think there is a limit to how much cobalt and lithium you can find. And I think those limits are going to be found by companies that have dedicated themselves to producing batteries and a system which is saying that the next way our society will be structured, it requires all these batteries to power it. And so that society has to be fought, and then we have to find another way. And the people who fight it are the ones who are going to try to, who are going to stop it, are the ones who are also going to have to figure out what's the other way we're going to go. So that's what is so amazing. Well, rather, that's what's so meaningful to me, because it's like the fighting the fourth industrial revolution in the United States in the way that I think of those Indian farmers doing, not the scale, but with that same sense of purpose. And I think we are going to have to find that here in the United States. I think the election season is going to be a time of drawing that awareness away. It's going to make people think about Trump and Biden or DeSantis. But nevertheless, I think this struggle at Thacker Pass is going to be one that I think we are going to have to kind of return to and give people updates and just sort of say, this is the world that is coming and is being constructed, and it's willing to sacrifice the people, the history, and the life that is there for lithium.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been railing on the left a lot in this episode, but like, it's worth just remembering that Trump was the one that actually signed the initial permit for lithium allotted to go ahead, and then Biden obviously is, all about, electrifying everything, the cars, the whole fucking grid. So it's bipartisan, just like every evil like thing that's gonna go forward. And I think too, like the second part that you brought up about like not just the fight, but the like being willing to try to imagine and then work toward an alternative is also like, I mean, people should not like glaze over that part, because that to me, like I brought this up last week when we were talking with Max, and I don't know if I articulated it very well, but like I do think part of the problem is not just like the educating and motivating people, but there's also like this issue of sort of failure of imagination, or like failure to even sort of be willing to inhabit that just imaginative space of like creativity, innovation, like real innovation, not like electric car innovation. Because I mean, always my like sample population is always my students, and it's like, I've had them read, or some of them read Bright Green Lies, and we've talked about some of this stuff in different ways in like environmental humanities classes, and there are like a lot of people who are willing to be educated and who are willing to critique it. But what it often comes back to is this thing of like, well, like, what else could we possibly do, right? Of like, it's almost like the voting thing. It's like, well, lesser of two evils. And it's even, I mean, this is a generalization, but like, especially like out here where there's the very fractured sort of like largely conservative population, but then very liberal pocket within it. And it's like the people on the right will defend their fossil fuels and be very critical of like EVs and stuff like that. And then people on the left are like, fossil fuels are evil, go lithium. It's like, okay, like these are not the only two pathways. There are other options, right? And like, we could deindustrialize. Like, we haven't, when you look at the sort of grand timeline, like step back from our very short in the relative scheme of things lifespan and look at like the history of this planet and all of the different species, including humans that have lived here, we've only been industrialized for like a blip. So there's other ways to do this. Like we can do permaculture, we can feed ourselves other ways in more localized ways. We don't have to keep up this lifestyle. But I think for a lot of especially young people, like that's a really hard thought to grasp, because it's all they've ever known. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, okay, maybe this isn't great. Maybe this is destroying the planet. Maybe the lithium is bad, and we don't want indigenous people to suffer, and yeah, like we care about the bullfrogs or whatever, but what's the alternative? So I think that's like a big part of the fight too, is like showing people, at least like a taste of like get outside the box, think outside the box.
And for people to understand that this world that's being constructed doesn't include them. It's not for them. It's for somebody else, and it's dedicated to replacing them, and ultimately, possibly even killing them. So it's I don't think that people have a choice, even if people think they have a choice. But I don't think we do. I think everything is being colonized, like Thacker Pass, and I think Allison's notion of all of us being brought into the position of what indigenous cultures experienced at the beginnings of capitalism. At this stage in capitalism, we will all start to experience that displacement, that being a useless eater, and whatever comes with that.
It's also dumb to me too, because it's like, what? It'd be one thing if it was like a win-lose thing, but it's a win-win. Like, what's good for humans, like what's actually really good for us, like what feels good and it's good for our health, physical health, mental health, what's good for our sustainable like well-being for our children, is also what's good for the land, is also what's good for like the antelopes, is also good for what's, taking down corporations, like peace, all like the good thing. Like I don't get why it's so hard. I mean, I do, but I don't know. It always just kind of frustrates me that it's like, well, it's a win-win. It really is.
Yeah, I don't want to read this part that Max wrote about Thacker Pass, because it really struck me. Can I do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Should I share my screen while I read it, or I can post it? Like, read it. What would you like me to do?
Share it so we can follow along.
Yeah.
You can post it if you want to post it over.
So this is part from the Thacker Pass website, Jess, that you showed us. But reading this just really, just gave me a sense of what this thing's about. He wrote, and he's talking about Thacker Pass and the region there. The land is alive here. Insects fly back and forth. Native bumblebees as large as a thumb buzz from flower to flower. A hummingbird investigates flashes of red rope stringing up tarps. A jackrabbit's ear twitches in the rabbit brush, and the tail of a lizard vanishes under a thicket of sagebrush. A pygmy rabbit, here where the company claims there are none, darts across the edge of camp. The beauty and vitality is impossible to quantify. But the reason we are here is because the spirits are alive at Thacker Pass. People have visions here. For those who are willing to open up, this place can begin to heal what is broken inside of you. Call this power God, the Creator, the great mystery, spirits of the land and ancestors, some form of physics, not yet understood by science, or whatever you like. Come here with an open heart and you will experience it. The mining companies see this mountainside as a pile of dead rock that can be turned into money. We see this land as a sacred place where rain falls on waxy, feathery sagebrush ancients, and sage grouse dance their ancient rituals, where Paiute and Shoshone ancestors are buried beneath the soil, where we must tread lightly because we walk on the face of our mother, the planet that birthed us. I just thought that was beautiful when he wrote it. I mean, he wrote that just on his website. So that's what this is about.
I think that's a good place to conclude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you for bringing this up. This definitely would not have come to us from me and Eduardo. This is not something I had been aware of.
This is,
I think it's very important, and it's like a canary in the coal mine that we would really need to pay attention to.
Lithium mine.
With canary and lithium.
I think I made that joke last week, so it's redundant. Yeah, fast forward like a few months and he'll be like, where are Eduardo and Jess? They're not joining the link. Maybe we'll keep doing that. Or doing something else.
I know.
But people who are hearing this, they should check out the website and read over some of the stuff. We
Yeah.
all the details. So.
We'll put the website. They need donations too. If people want to donate, there's a cool like sort of timeline that takes you through, especially like the legal battles, which we didn't really get into.
Will Falk is a lawyer.
Yeah, he's part of the team.
And he's out there camping.
Not all.
All right.
Don't put that in there.
All right, here we go.
Oh, I just had a thought. Maybe we can put it in before the outro. We're planning to have Max on next week, so if people have questions or they want us to bring up, they can put it in the comments. If you're watching this within like a week of, or maybe a little less than a week of posting. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jessica.
Did I say it okay?
Yeah,
you did. Well, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenging the mainstream left. We've posted information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes where we found this episode, or on our blog at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you have heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, BitChute, obviously YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. And you can find our blog and any of those links in the episode notes where we found this episode, as well as the links we have mentioned in this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. And I'm Eduardo Abarca with co-hosts Jessica and Andy Lipson, and we'll check you all next time.